Hello, it is Thursday, and we're going to go over some of those notes we looked at yesterday. When we were last talking about Egypt, we stopped here actually with notes, and these are things you have currently filled in. Also, we drew the pyramid that was in our book. It didn't quite look like this, but this is a very similar comparison as well. And if you remember, throwing back to that, we talked about how the pharaoh was at the top, then the government, we saw soldiers, then scribes, people who wrote, who were educated, merchants, wealthier traders, craftspeople who built things with their hands, then your peasants, which if you look closely, were most of your farmers, and then of course, slaves being the lowest. The one that's in our book kind of put peasants or laborers with slaves kind of together in one big category. And you can notice that a lot of these are kind of in a lot of the same kind of categories. All right. We talked a little bit about priests with that. And remember, follow along with those notes that we added to our 3-subject notebook. So make sure you're open to your 3-subject notebook. You find this section that was below the pyramid we drew. Pause it if you still need to get to that page. So our priests in ancient Egypt, much like I've been saying, were pretty high in the social pyramid. They're almost to the very top, just below the pharaoh. And they, along with the pharaoh, would actually perform many of the special rituals for the gods, to keep the gods happy. And not only that, but the Egyptians are going to believe that if the gods were angry, then people would die and crops would not grow. So basically in ancient Egypt, they saw every major problem that happened was probably because they had done something to make that problem. So they viewed it. And also, this is going to help maintain social and political control or order within ancient Egypt. Now, if you need to go back and see those last couple notes at the right end, just pause and go back a little bit. But we'll move on to family, and this is where we saw women and children and the pets. But it's going to be summarized here in this category. So women are basically going to have the same rights as men, as we saw yesterday. And women could actually own property or also manage property. So they could own their own business. They could run a restaurant, let's say, or an inn, which is like a hotel and a restaurant. They could also have their own jobs. So they didn't necessarily have to work for their father or have to work for their husband. They could kind of have their own work. Good example, maybe you are really good at weaving, which is making like baskets. Or maybe you're really good at, who knows, maybe you're a really good blacksmith. Women could have a lot of the same jobs men could. So we saw a lot of equality that wasn't really huge across other parts of the ancient world. And most Egyptians, men and women, are going to get married in their early teens. So probably like their late middle school years, early high school. And the main reason they would do this back then was life expectancy. How long people would live wasn't as long as it is today. So people who were in their 30s and 40s were considered for the average person to kind of be in their old age. Specifically in their like 40s and their 50s. That would be pretty old age in this time period because a lot of people are going to die to diseases. They may not have good diets. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that could cause younger deaths. So that's why people would also get married earlier. Speaking of having families, pets will still be a big thing in ancient Egypt. And so like dogs we saw will kind of originate for hunting. They're going to use them as hunting animals. So like bird hunting. If you're hunting birds, a lot of people even still today use dogs for like fetch and retrieval, which is to go get what you've hunted, or to even help with the hunting, to like get the birds to start flying in the sky, for example. And cats are also going to be some of the most popular pets in ancient Egypt, and they're actually going to be very respected because there's a religious component connected to cats. And in fact, a goddess named Mew is based on the Egyptians' love of cats. So another thing, if you've ever seen the movie, having a brain fart, The Mummy, there it is. In The Mummy, there's a scene where the guy that's the bad guy in the movie, when he sees cats, he like runs in fear, because cats were also believed to be like the guardians of the underworld. So they were like the guardians that Mew sent to Earth to help protect us from like bad and evil spirits. It's kind of like the idea they talk about in that movie. Pretty cool. Moving on to technology. Some of the technology of ancient Egypt. Well, they're gonna have a writing system, which is hieroglyphic based. And their writing system will eventually have over 6,000 different symbols. So their hieroglyphics was a form of pictography. So it is a picture-based written system. But technically they are words and it's a written system, but there's a lot of images they use in their language. And they're going to develop a type of paper made from reed, which is papyrus. And reed plants you'll find most commonly around like the shores of a river. And depending on the parts of the country, I think here in Missouri we have certain types of reeds that grow. So it's not like a tree, but it's almost like if you ever see those like stocky looking things that grow along the shore, the cattails are the ones that kind of look like a cattail. Those are all like, I'm pretty sure those are types of reeds. Also, with math, they're going to develop and discover and expand on geometry, which geometry, remember, is the measurements, use of shapes and forms, and you'll probably do a little bit this year if you haven't yet, but I believe you do a little bit this year in 6th grade with geometry. So measuring of area and a space, how to build a pyramid or the shape of a pyramid, and how much area is on the inside or on the surface. All of that's going to be needed if you're building a big project like that. And of course they're going to study the stars, as we saw yesterday relating to the pyramids. They, along with many other ancient cultures, will look at the stars to know the time of the year, to maybe know the seasons, because remember, they are in a desert, so they don't see snow and they don't have leaves falling off the trees in the fall. So they're going to use the stars to best judge the time of the year. And some Egyptian medicines that are going to be discovered, as again we saw yesterday, was surgery is going to be one of the first things they discover because of mummifying bodies. They're going to have an idea of anatomy, which is knowing where different organs are in the human body. Another thing they're going to discover was like pain relievers. So if you chewed on certain types of barks, you have natural medicines, which is where a lot of our medicines come from today, is plants. And they're going to be the first people to use penicillin to help treat and prevent disease. And remember, as I said yesterday, penicillin will be really discovered and manufactured for the first time in like the late 1800s, when a scientist notices that when some mold is growing inside one of his experiments, none of the bacteria in that experiment was living around the mold, and the mold was killing it, and that mold was penicillin. So the Egyptians were the first to discover it, and it wouldn't be until like the late 1800s that a modern scientist will also discover that same thing. And today we have antibiotics that come from penicillin. All right. So tomorrow we are going to look at the religion and beliefs of ancient Egypt, and we're going to start looking at how they mummified the different types of people in their society, and we'll also look at problems that are going to arrive when they start building tombs. Those are the big things that we talked about yesterday. Don't forget to finish up your vocab that you were assigned on Tuesday. Today is the day that is due, so remember, by 10 p.m. tonight you need to have both of those vocabulary assignments completed. So once you have finished this, use the remainder of time to finish up those vocab. Go back, double check, make sure you have also finished both assignments. And don't forget to have correct citations on your Google slide with your vocab word. I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to finish up our presentations. Have a great rest of your Thursday. And thank goodness tomorrow is Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.